Destiny 2 Season of the Seraph is here, and with it comes a brand new glaive archetype. That's right, Judgment of Kelgorath is not just the first non-raid solar glaive, it's a brand new archetype of glaive with stronger projectile damage, and it's craftable for enhanced perks. On top of this, we've got new glaive perks and exotic interactions to break both PvE and PvP. I'm talking perks that let you never reload, fix your slow glaive handling, buff your glaive melee, and even create 3 new one-shot glaive builds for the projectile in PvP. One for Hunter, one for Titan, and one for Warlock, and I'll give all my perk recommendations as we get into it. I thought going into this season that Bungie was going to tone down the damage output for glaives in PvE and get rid of some of the one-shots in PvP, because they actually nerfed glaives this season. Melee damage went from 75 down to 67, and the perk Unstoppable Force went from a 30% buff to a 20% buff. Turns out they were just preparing to introduce a new glaive type altogether, and I can see why they did it too, because these new damage numbers are out of this world. If you've used the exotic Warlock glaive, you'll have an idea of what Judgment of Kelgorath will feel like. It's the same strong projectile damage, 146 in PvP, and they have similar high range stats and low handling stats. So if you've played with one, you'll have a feel for the other. The difference is, Judgment of Kelgorath is a legendary glaive with its own perk pool, so we can do things with this damage that were never possible on the exotic Warlock glaive. Plus, we can now use it on every class. This opens the door to a ton of different exotics and buffs that weren't available before, and Bungie updated several exotic armor pieces to now work with the glaive melee. Real quick, take note on the stats before we jump into the perks. The high range stat of 71 is the highest range stat of any legendary glaive, topping the Enigma by 16 points. It's also neck and neck with the Enigma's high aim assist stat at 70, so it should feel pretty sticky connecting those shots. On the flip side, it has the lowest shield energy stat at 25 and the lowest handling stat at 28. Every other legendary glaive has much higher stats in both of those areas, and you can feel how sluggish those stats are when you use it. This is the price you're going to pay for such an insane impact on your projectile. 146 damage in PvP is a heck of a cleanup tool. Keep all this in mind as you build out your glaive, because you may want to spec into more shield energy or handling over range depending on how you play. Now let's get into the perks, because there are some really great options that were previously unavailable unless you did raids. Perks that matter more now that we have higher projectile damage. And brand new perks that I enjoy a lot more than I thought I would. For the first column, we've got all the same options as other legendary glaives. I still recommend Supercooled Accelerator if you just want a basic range bump, as it ups your range by 10 and doesn't take away any shield energy. But I could see going for one of the shield boost options because the range is already so high here. I'm really interested in Auxiliary Reserves, as it brings your shield duration in line with other legendary glaives without hurting range at all. To me, I'm firing so slow anyways with this new glaive archetype that I might as well put all the risk into the one shot and give myself more shield to work with, especially as I get into these PvP one-shot builds. In PvE, I can see the benefit of low impedance windings, as you probably won't need range as much there. The next column gets super interesting to me. I used to always recommend as much range as possible with accurized rounds, but now we've got a new contender, Swap Mag. Swap Mag increases a glaive's ready and stow speed. Keep in mind this isn't handling, it's ready and stow speed, which is super important on a glaive. Now I don't have exact numbers on this yet, but because it's not a handling boost, I think it's safe to assume this is a multiplier like a dexterity armor mod. Regardless, it feels really good on Judgment of Kelgorath. It's so sluggish without it that it's my #1 pick for this column, hands down, no matter what you have to give up in that column. More range or more ammo capacity, doesn't matter. Give me the hot swaps. In the third column, there is one perk that stands out again. Why would you run anything else? Overflow. Overflow on a glaive? You literally just walk over ammo and it loads it in. The reload is such a pain point in glaives that anything you can do to mitigate it is amazing. And here you are just taking away the need to reload at all. In fact, you have more rounds in the magazine than you ever could before. I was often walking around in the Crucible with 6 shots in the mag. The other options don't even compare in my mind. Pugilist and Demo are great perks. I could see how you'd use it in PvE to refill your abilities, but free reload with Overflow. Same goes for everything else in this column. The only thing that really makes me reconsider is Immovable Object. And that's because the base shield duration is so low on the Judgment of Kelgorath. Immovable Object could fix that by giving you larger chunks of shield energy for blocking and shooting. You just have to be standing still. This is what ultimately makes me choose Overflow because it's free ammo refills. You don't really have to do anything. So for any other perk here, you're going to have to sell me real hard to give up Overflow. Okay, here's where things get crazy. Column 4. I know many people will jump immediately to Incandescent in the 4th column and get excited. And listen, explosions are cool, but this is the least interesting option for PvE and PvP to me. I'm sure there will be a use for it in PvE, but when I use a glaive in PvE, I like using it for either protection or big damage, and I don't think this option will give you either. In PvP, the Scorch Burn doesn't do much. You could use it combined with an ability that applies more Scorch to try and do some sort of ignition, but you'd most likely have to swap off the glaive, and I'm not sure that will feel very synergetic. In time, I'm sure people will find some interesting builds, but this one just doesn't sound like the play for me. For another standard, it's nice to see Impulse Amplifier on the list, as it's a #1 glaive perk that the other solar glaive, Lubray's Ruin, doesn't have. I wish that Impulse Amplifier was in the 3rd column instead so that it could be used alongside the damage boosting perks in column 4, but it's nice to see it on the list nonetheless, as it was sorely missed on Lubray's Ruin. This was a must-have due to hit registration issues with Glaive before this season, but if you didn't know, Bungie patched this in the latest update, and I haven't had a single funky hit registration problem since then, so I feel okay not using Impulse Amplifier to go for another perk that will increase my damage. Now, something that Lubray's Ruin did have, and that I'm very excited to see return, is Enhanced Surrounded. Enhanced Surrounded was already a massive amount of damage on a normal glaive, but on Judgment of Kelgorath's new higher damage projectile, the damage is going to be insane. I think the best context I can give for this amount of damage is in PvP. The Yeet Machine one-shot glaive build I did on Lubray's Ruin with Enhanced Surrounded would only one-shot up to 5 Resil at 192 damage. And you needed Radiant to get to the 211 damage that would one-shot against any Resilience. With Kelgorath, you can one-shot with just Enhanced Surrounded at 214 a body shot. That is wild. Obviously, no one has crafted this glaive yet, but I'm telling you the math works out for you to run an Invis Hunter, yeet into enemy lines with no extra damage buff, and one shot at 214 a projectile. Wild. Bungie also buffed Enhanced Surrounded this season to get a 47% damage buff without the need for the Surrounded spec weapon mod. In PvP, this opens up the door to use a free hand grip mod, which I highly recommend you try out on a glaive. And in PvE, it means you can put a boss or major spec mod on. The damage was already a ton in PvE, but now with the higher damage glaive frame and adding a weapon mod, it may be the most powerful PvE glaive we've ever seen. High recommend. Harmony. This is the first time we've seen Harmony on a glaive, and there's a reason it's here. In PvE, this is a great opportunity for some easy extra damage when you are slaying out with your other weapon, you get weak, and you swap to your glaive in a pinch for the shield and damage reduction. As you're shielding and backing up looking for cover, you'll have 20% extra projectile damage for 7 seconds. 8 seconds if it's enhanced. That's great. In PvP, Harmony alone won't be enough to make that much of a difference. 146 times 20% is just 175, but here's the reason you see it on this glaive and not the others. If we push that 175 just a bit further with Radiant, you're hitting for 193, one-shotting up to 6 Resilience. This is a one-shot you don't even need your shield for. If you're on a hunter and you get a primary kill with any weapon, do a dodge, and when you swap to your glaive, you'll have 7 seconds of a one-shot up to 6 Resil. If you're in a well or have high energy fire, you've just boosted that damage up to 201 for one-shotting any resilience level. Now that's good, but we can go further. Unstoppable Force. Unstoppable Force being nerfed only took away the one-shot builds on the other glaives. But because the base damage is so high on Judgment of Kelgorath, the newly adjusted 20% buff Unstoppable Force will let you one-shot, and it's a better one-shot than we've ever had. Previously, the 30% buff from Unstoppable Force plus Radiant would only buff Enigma or Lubray's to 187 a shot. That's only enough to one-shot up to 1 Resil, which, let's be honest, doesn't happen. The new glaive with Unstoppable Force and Radiant hits at 193 a shot, one-shotting up to 6 Resil just like Harmony. The difference is that you don't need a kill to activate this one-shot. The strategy is to simply grab some shield energy from connecting one glaive projectile shot, but then you back up from the duel to heal because the new glaives fire so slow you're probably not going to win that 1v1. Then when you're ready to re-engage, you dodge to become Radiant, get your shield out, let them take the first shot, and then you shoot yours for 193 damage. This gives you 2 different ways to run a one-shot glaive with Judgment of Kelgorath. If you like using your primary as your main and your glaive as your secondary, you go for Harmony. But if you use your glaive as your main weapon, you're going to lean towards Unstoppable Force as the perk that you want. And I'm not even done with Unstoppable Force yet. We got more things to break. For Titans, the Glaive Walker build I had with Path of Burning Steps won't work anymore for Lubre's Rune. But with Judgment of Kelgorath, it's even better than it was before. I'm so glad this is a solar glaive because it would not be possible without it. Path of Burning Steps gives you a 15% buff in PvP for solar kills. The kill can be anything, ability, weapon, doesn't matter, and it procs randomly between your first and third solar kill, usually the second. This means you just play the game as normal, and sometimes you'll get a 10-second 15% damage buff called Firewalker. When this happens, you just open up your shield, proc Unstoppable Force, and you've got a 38% buff on this aggressive frame glaive that will one-shot any resilience level at 201 damage a shot. Plus, if you keep your streak going, the buff from Path of Burning Steps will refresh and give you even more damage at the second level of the perk. In PvE, stacking that Firewalker buff from Path of Burning Steps is even easier because you can just chain solar abilities. You don't even need to use the glaive. If you get up to Firewalker times 4, you'll have a 40% buff that stacks on top of Unstoppable Force or Harmony. Warlocks, hold on, I got you too. It's not exactly a one-shot, but you only have to fire one shot. If you run Getaway Artist on an Arc Warlock, you can eat your grenade to become amplified and get an enhanced Arc Buddy. One burst from your enhanced Arc Buddy combined with Unstoppable Force on Judgment of Kelgorath will one-shot any Resil Guardian at over 200 damage total. I believe that even if only 2 of those Arc Buddy shots hit, you'll still one-shot up to 8 Resil. Now lastly, I've got the new Close to Melee perk in the 4th column, a brand new perk that appears to give 30% extra melee damage with the testing I did. I feel like I could do an entire video on just this perk to explain it because it's got 2 different parts, kind of like Golden Tricorn. You have to get a kill with the projectile part of the glaive, and then your melee damage will get a buff, and that buff is refreshed on projectile kills or melee kills at that point. Sounds complicated, but basically you can just keep going to town once you have it procced. The difference and where it falls flat for me is that the damage is only a 30% increase to the melee. And the glaive melee just got nerfed down to 67 in PvP this season, so that means that in PvP it's still going to require 3 glaive melees to get a kill. If they had left the melee damage where it would have been able to double melee up to a certain Resil level, but that's not possible anymore. On top of that, Wormgod Caress and Winter's Gal both got nerfed to where their max damage is only 3.5 times rather than the old 7.5 times. So in PvE, it just never feels like you can get the damage to insane levels like you're hoping for. Yes, you could clear out a room full of ads and maybe some yellow bars along with it, but when are you going to use a basic glaive melee for that over abilities with explosions and other effects? There could be something I'm missing with Close to Melee, some glaive and exotic combination I haven't thought of yet. I'm excited to see what the community comes up with, but for now, I wouldn't focus on a role with this too much. Don't forget about the origin traits either. Ambush and Hake Breach armaments are both great perks. Ambush applies extra damage, handling, and range for the first few moments that you engage your opponent. The damage only applies in PvE, but even in PvP, the extra handling and range are welcome additions to the weapon. And Hake Breach armaments are going to be great for taking down Titan barricades. I think they are both equally great options. It's going to be interesting where everyone lands for their preference. Judgment of Kelgorath is a really cool glaive. I was hoping for a lightweight frame for faster movement, but this is a great alternative. The extra damage from the projectile could be insane in PvE once we get enough deep sights to craft Enhanced Surrounded. And that big damage also gave us 3 different ways to one-shot while stacking Unstoppable Force or Harmony. And the new Swap Mag perk and Overflow feel amazing. I'm looking forward to going over all the new season of the Seraph weapons and perks in the coming weeks. Until next time, GG.